We are here, it's October 29th, 1999. We are in Covington, Kentucky at the 53rd reunion of the 12th Armored Division. Right in front of me is George Messer. He is with the 66th AIB in Company C. And let me just start off by asking you about where you were born and a little bit about your raising, your parents, brothers and sisters.
Well, I was born June 10th, 1922, and my dad happened to be a World War I veteran, and I was the only child, which was something I decided never to have happen to me. So we had 8 daughters. So that's about it.
Where were you born?
Buffalo, New York.
Okay. And what was your elementary and secondary education?
I went to Catholic school from grade 1 to 8, and then public school, which was Seneca Vocational School. And from there I started working. Started working at Buffalo Arms because the war had been going on. I started out at working for, let's see, what Air Force? Golly, I can't think of what the name of the, we were making P-40Es.
And this is in New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
And from there I went into what they call Buffalo Arms. We were making machine guns and for both the planes and the tanks and half-tracks.
And was this directly out of high school, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was approximately, what, 1940?
let's see, 3 years of high school. That would be about 39, 40, yeah. And from 40 to 41, I worked at Buffalo Arms. And in December 42, I was sent into the Army. And,
Not by choice?
Not by choice.
Okay.
But I knew it was coming, so I didn't go one way or the other. I just figured that was my time, so I went in.
What do you remember about Pearl Harbor?
Just
where were you? And
I was working at Buffalo Arms at the time, and that was when I figured I was going to be in service very shortly, and it was just 1 year since the Pearl Harbor. I went in December 2nd, 1942. So
how was, since your dad was in World War I, how was his reaction to you?
Well, his exact words were, "If you gotta go, wait until they call you." So that's exactly what he did when he went in, so I did the same thing, actually. I worked until the time they called me in.
Did he give you some advice once you were drafted? Or?
Yes. His, he says, when I get overseas, to let them know where I am and what I'm doing. And we had a code worked out that certain words would tell them where in France I was and what was going on. If it was light resistance or heavy resistance or just about the same location that I was in. So it worked out real well. He followed me pretty darn closely all the way through. But he was quite a man.
What did he do?
In service or
no,
after service?
After service.
Well, he was everything from a bartender, and his main deal was working as a delivery man for Lang's Bakery. He had a truck route all through the countryside. His route was about 100 miles from the bakery all the way around through the country and then back again. So that was, in those days, quite a trip, every day of the week. So,
Did your mom work, or?
yes, she worked at as a sales clerk in a meat market and grocery store combination for a while. And she worked just about up till the time I left for service.
Well, going back to getting drafted, you were in Buffalo, New York, and you mentioned earlier when we were talking that you ended up in Utah.
Right.
Tell me the story of that.
Well, when I was drafted in December 9th, we went to a little Fort Niagara where we got our uniforms, our clothes, and then we boarded a train from there to Utah. And we had our basic training in Utah, which was very cold and wintry at that time, December. I remember the snow and the sand combination really was rough doing any marching in. And then after that, which also was a dry state, which we weren't very used to. From after that, we had our basic training, which was about 8 to 10 weeks, I believe. And from there, we were sent to Colorado, Fitzsimmons General. That was the time when the Air Corps decided they wanted their own medical outfits. They were always attached to the Army. So I happened to be lucky enough to be called for that duty.
So was it something that they just proposed to a group of you and said, do you want this? Or?
Yes, in our basic training, they had interviews, and anybody had any medical training or any first aid training, for that matter, was considered eligible for the Colorado. So at Fitzsimmons General, we had a well-rounded education as far as medical deal was concerned. We had surgery, we had at that time there was a lot of cases of lung problems. We had psycho wards that we took care of. Just about everything you could think of. We had different sections, and we went through each part of the training. Like the nurses today, they go out on affiliations to different hospitals. We had everything right in one circle. And we had some of the best World War I and early nurses as instructors. They were great. They really helped us out. So when I graduated from there as a medical technician, I was sent to Colorado, Wright Field in Ohio. And we started a base hospital there.
And so how long was the medical training?
Let's see. I think all told it must have been a good about 3 months. And of course I was at Wright Field, which was another deal. We had a lot of, some of us worked in the hospital itself, supply, ambulance driving, and they had something like 5,000 or 6,000 civilian employees on the field at the time. So they had a visiting nurse, and some of us used to drive the visiting nurse to whoever happened to be sick or off duty at the time, check up and see how they were doing. That was another real good deal, duty. So you're going all day. And that's about it. I worked there right up until the Battle of the Bulge started, which was, what, December 24th? And the 25th, I had my orders cut, and 9-day delay en route, 14 days aboard ship, and I ended up in France.
What was the explanation that they gave you, if any?
Every able-bodied man was eligible to fill in for the losses they were suffering at the Battle of the Bulge. And the Air Corps also had a deal where you kept up on your training too. You were assigned to the rifle range for one thing, and do a little shooting here and there, keep up to the practice. And that helped. But when we got to France, we were issued a brand new M1 rifle, all Cosmoline, and we cleaned it up and sighted it in, and we were on 6x6s heading for the front.
So did you have any, besides basic training in the States, did you have any infantry training in the United States?
Just a small amount. We did go to Georgia for training, for a little bit of artillery, you know, moving up under artillery barrages and target practice with the M1s. But I think that was only about maybe 8 weeks at the most. But
How was the ship ride over?
kind of hectic. We had a convoy of, I should say, about 100 ships, and there happened to be a submarine, German submarine, following. It did hit one troop transport, and they were going with the sub-chasers for the bombing, and I happened to be down in the third layer of the ship, and you could see the armor plate of the ship vibrating as the bombs were going off. It was kind of scary, really scary.
Did you get seasick, or?
No, believe it or not, I didn't get seasick either way, coming here and going. There was a lot that were, but I have to be lucky, I guess.
Yeah. So you get over to France. Where do you remember where you were directly?
Well, we hit Le Havre, and it was kind of tough getting through because there's a lot of sunken ships in the harbor yet that they hadn't been able to move out or blow up. So we ended in debarked at Le Havre, and we were loaded on the 6x6s. And we moved into France, let's see, yeah, close to Nancy. And that's where we got our M1s and our cleaning up the rifles and sighting them in for combat. Into the 6x again and towards the front. And it was just, well, let's see, I should say, I can't remember just where I joined the 12th, but it wasn't too long after we hit France, about 25-30 days, and I was with the 12th.
So you didn't even have 30 days of training once you were over there?
No.
Hmm.
Straight on in.
Hmm.
But worked out pretty well. We had a bunch of regular Army boys that were still left in the 12th, and they took the new recruits in under their wing, and so I kept a watch until we got little bit of combat Indy
Mhm.
under our belts,
Mhm.
which was nice. I mean, you got a group of gang soldiers you could never meet. They were great.
Do you remember some names?
Chief Vanover was my squad leader, and Emmy was the assistant. And let's see, there was Omar Mudd, McLean was another, and my truck driver was, let's see, what was the name? I was just talking about him last night, in fact. Let's see.
You can tell.
Mhm.
You can tell if you want.
Well, what-
Moskovitz.
Yeah, Sam Moskovitz. Now, that was a truck driver, and he was fluent in language. He could speak Russian, French, German, Polish, just about anything. He could rattle right on off. So he was a real godsend when it come to dealing with the German prisoners and the German population. We always call on Sam to be our interpreter.
Was this just from his high school education, or
Well,
was he an older?
he was an older guy. I think he, let's see, I should say, I don't think he was regular Army at the time, but he was one of the first recruits with the 12th. And I remember him well because he was a guy that we'd go through town and all the children in the town would gather around Sam. He always had chewing gum. If there was any repairs to be done, I would have a picture of him repairing a wagon for two of the little German boys while we were stopped for, I think, overnight. And of course, like I say, when he could speak German, that really helped. We ate real well at that time, and he was an all-around guy.
So did he survive through the war? Or?
Yes, he was discharged when he broke up the 12th. He was sent home. And when they did break up the 12th, I had too many points to go to the Pacific and not enough to go home at the time. So I ended up with the 1st Armored Infantry in occupation duty until April 46, and I was sent home. So that's about it.
So tell me about your infantry experiences. What?
Well, that was quite a deal. Talking about Sam Moskovitz, he was riding a tank on the 50 caliber machine gun, top of the tank, and he was hit dead center in his helmet, and he fell off the tank, and I was behind the tank. I crawled up to him and asked him how he was doing. He says, fine, I can't feel a thing. So I went up on the tank and started firing the 50. And whoever was firing back put 2 bullets in the ammunition carrier and one up the barrel of the machine gun, and it caught both my fingers. So I got off the tank and followed it in, no more up on top. So it happened to be that the bullet that hit Sam's helmet took a furrow right on top of his forehead. It took about 3 or 4 hair. Sam was very bald on top, and it took what little hair he had left right off. It never touched the skull.
Huh.
He was a very lucky guy. We were talking about that last night, in fact, at the, how lucky he was. A couple of the other guys remember Sam getting hit. So, you know, I had a little close experience here or there,
Yeah.
but we were lucky.
And so you don't remember exactly when you joined in with the 12th Armored?
Not the exact towns.
Had they hit Herlsheim yet, or? they had
Yes,
passed?
it was past Herlsheim. In fact, that's why I joined the 12 because of the number of wounded and prisoners they had taken at Herlsheim. So that's when I joined them, just after Herlsheim.
Did you have any experiences with the POW camps?
Well, we did liberate one of the camps, which was very, very bad. The people were just about starved to death when we liberated them. The only thing I can remember on that was Captain Fox, which was our captain at the time, decided he would get something for those people to eat. So all the sea rations, especially the soups and whatnot, put in a big condom at the base of the camp and start cooking it up.
Mm-hmm.
And the people just weren't able to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Their stomachs were so dehydrated and whatnot that they just had a little bit and that was it. But they did manage to make out pretty well. One camp that we liberated, there was a man and a woman that we more or less took under our wing. So we used to feed those the chow line, and after the chow line, when they would get something to eat and come back out. They were with us about maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then they were displaced persons. So they were rounding up the displaced persons to see if they could get them back to their original locations. So they left us then. But it was something.
What was the nationality of the POWs?
Mostly Polish and Hungarian. I know there was an awful lot of them at that time, trying to get back.
Were you able to have any interaction with any of them, or?
No, not actually. After the war ended, we ended up in a little town called Rosenberg, or Rosenheim, I've forgotten just which. But there was an old couple at that, I was with the first at that time. There was an old couple living in a, like a woodshed. And it was starting to get pretty cold. So we checked with the captain. We couldn't let them stay with us. We had a large building where we were in supply and armament. I happened to turn out to be armament man, so. Upstairs was 3rd floor. Nobody was there. So we asked him if they could take over there. And he said, "Do you want to be responsible for them? Go ahead." So we did. And it was great. They were our mom and pop for the duration.
Mm-hmm.
And the old boy used to do the snow shoveling, and she used to come down and start a fire in the coal stove or in the wood stove, so it'd be nice and warm when we got out of bed, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that Christmas of she said that if we could get some sugar and some flour, she would bake Christmas cookies. So we managed to get the flour and the sugar together, and we had a Christmas cookies, and we went to midnight mass at the church in town, and it was really great. Of course, we saved all our liquor supply for the last few months, so we have it for Christmas and New Year's. So we had the two old folks down with us for Christmas, which was great. But, that's about it.
Okay, so you weren't able to go back home directly after the war ended. Oh, one question I wanted to ask you is, what did you do once you found out that the war had ended?
We were stationed in this little town, like I said, Rosenberg. And they still had the non-fraternization law, and we were sort of cut off. But we did have a chance to do some hunting, and we had fresh deer meat, just about everything we could think of as far as hunting, wild boar, and we ate pretty good. The German population used to come in and do the cooking, and that would help too. So they knew how to prepare the wild game for eating, so worked out real well. But that was the time they broke up the 12th, and I ended up with the 1st, which was around Stuttgart and Frankfurt. It was the American occupation zone. So we did a lot of checking in the different towns for wanted Nazi war crime people, which kept us busy for quite a while. And then we did move around. Like I say, I was in armament, so all the guns and whatnot were being taken off the tanks and the half-tracks and all that, and stored, cleaned up. And, that was my job till the time I went home.
How long were you in occupation?
Not quite a year. I left in April of 46. So that was my service time.
Once you got home, what did you do?
I took it easy for about 2 or 3 weeks, but I wasn't used to that, so I looked around for a job, and at that time, industry was all turning back to away from the war industry, so they were laying off left, right, and sideways. And the coal strike happened to be going on at the time I left. So I took advantage of my medical training and went to work at the local hospital, Sisters Hospital. And while I was working there, I met my wife, which was a nurse in training through the Army Nurse Corps. So I waited. We were dating for 2 years until she graduated, and we're married.
And this was an actual college degree plan?
Yeah, for her, that was, the Army paid for her training for the, until she graduated. So we, both of us after that were sweating it out when the Korean situation started, because we were eligible to be called any time, but luckily we weren't called. Had 1 or 2 children by then, so that helped.
Did you go on to college or anything like that?
No.
No? What did you do?
Go to work at, after I left Sisters Hospital, which was 5 years after I was discharged, I went to work for Westinghouse, making motors. And I worked there until, for 33 years until I retired.
Good retirement.
Yeah, I retired in when I was 62. And Westinghouse closed up before I would have been 65. So I was real happy I retired early.
Yeah. So you said you had 8 children?
That's right, 8 daughters.
Oh. Was there, did you want to have that many children, or were you trying to get that son?
Well, I don't know really. A son would have been fine too, but after we had 7 daughters, I wouldn't know what to do with the son. Sleep-wise, that is.
He probably wouldn't have survived either.
Right. He would have been a spoiled guy, I'll tell you that. With 7 sisters.
Well, thank you, George, so much for everything you said. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention, or?
No, just that it's nice to be able to get together every year or every other year. Talk things over. Like, I never knew that some of the fellas in the 66 remembered Sam being hit, and we were talking about that last night. In fact, they told him I had some pictures of him, so I'd send them in and make sure we had the same Sam. The guy that we see the pictures of looked awfully young from the time I met him.
Oh,
so
right.
I looked a little younger in those days too. But outside of that, it's nice getting together. And we have a local group around the Buffalo area that get together 3 times a year. We have a summer picnic and Christmas party, and usually you get together for lunch early spring. So it works out real nice. We have about 22 in our group locally.
And is this just 66th, or?
Yeah, well, no, it's the 12th Armored. We
Right.
have some from all the different outfits.
Right.
But the last count, we had 22 that get together locally.
Good. Well, George, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.